Cantonese magazine news shows, whatever you want to call them now, right? She's kind of the producer. There it is.
Yes.
Come in.
Hello. There.
Hi, everybody.
So hopefully. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Seem to be all right? Yes. Well, good afternoon, and thank you very much for coming today. And what I wanted to do was, in particular, for the Chinese language media to update you on the trip that we just took, which was a trip that included a stop initially in the Silicon Valley for a couple of days, followed by a good stretch in China, in Shanghai, Chongqing, and Hong Kong, and then on to Japan. And I'll focus most of my comments on the Chinese portion of the trip, although I'd be happy to answer your questions on any part of the trip. And I wanted to speak to this group of media in particular because one of the reasons I was so proud to have the opportunity to make this trip as the Mayor of Toronto was because of the size and the outsized contribution that is made by the Chinese Canadian community to the well-being of Toronto, economically, culturally, politically, socially, in every respect. And I think it was a huge part of our calling card as we made this trip to attract investment, to attract jobs to Toronto, to forge new and stronger relationships. A huge part of our calling card was the fact that we have in the city today, resident here, hundreds of thousands of people whose backgrounds are Chinese, whether they were born there, and if you added in second-generation people, you would have even more. In Hong Kong, of course, we were also able to say that there were quite literally hundreds of thousands of Canadians living there. And I think this is an opportunity, as between Hong Kong as one part of China, but also the other parts we visited, an opportunity for really building durable, significant relationships. I would say, now having been there, and it was the first time that I had been to Shanghai, for example, for 32 years, and beyond the astonishment that I had at the change that had taken place in that city over time, the one other conclusion that I could reach among a number would be that we have an opportunity that I think is unparalleled in the world because of the size of the population that have come back and forth between the two countries, because of the good history that has existed in terms of relationships between China and Canada, to build a relationship that will pay huge dividends for us in many respects, but of course particularly with respect to economic benefits to both countries. But I'm thinking here my responsibility is Toronto and jobs and investment that we need as a frankly smaller country in the context of the size of our capital pools and our capital markets. I think people often don't focus on the fact in this city that Canada is our second largest trading partner, and that is added to the huge cultural ties that exist because of the very substantial populations that exist at both ends. We have not had a mayor of Toronto that has visited China since 2008, and I thought it was way past time, given the importance of the relationship in every respect, cultural, economic, and otherwise, for the Mayor of Toronto to make such a visit. I also learned, and it was something I didn't know before, although I've been told about it, in fact, quite jokingly, the Mayor of Cambridge, Ontario, who's visited China a number of times, said to me, well, you'll be surprised when you get over there. Mayors are actually treated with respect over there. And I think he was distinguishing between that and the treatment that mayors get here, but I don't find that disrespectful. But there's no question that the mayor-to-mayor relationship seems, in the context of Chinese cities, perhaps to mean a little bit more, and that my discussions with the mayor of Shanghai and the mayor of Chongqing and so on were hugely important as a means of trying to strengthen and broaden the relationships that exist between the cities and between different parts of those cities, whether it be the governments themselves or whether it be the business communities. We also, of course, beyond meetings with mayors and government officials, saw a great many businesses. And again, I think a lot of Torontonians would not necessarily understand the size and the scale and the sophistication of some of these companies in China today, which we would dearly love to see invest, either for the first time or invest more in Toronto. In the category of invest more, we have a company like Greenland, I mean, this is a global conglomerate that focuses on real estate but has many other kinds of activities. And I was thrilled at the fact that we solidified and saw signed in our presence with them this agreement that will cause Canadian and Toronto food products to be able to be made available in the higher-end grocery stores that Greenland operates in China. I thought during the trip and during the ceremony of that signing about some food product manufacturer here in Toronto presently selling into maybe a market of Southern Ontario, maybe the rest of Canada, maybe a little bit of the United States, suddenly having access to a market in China thanks to this Greenland agreement of a couple of 100 million people, and what that could do for businesses here that are medium-sized in terms of expanding their horizons, creating more jobs here, and so on. I think of the Fosun Corporation. I mean, this is, by any other word, it's not a bad word at all. This is a huge multinational global conglomerate that is in all kinds of different businesses, and I can think of 2 or 3 where they could be very active investors, and I would seek them to be, going forward, very active investors in Toronto. They're very big in tourism. A lot of people wouldn't know they own the Club Med brand. They own that business. And that kind of expertise in tourism is something that I think we could use here in terms of just further investment and new ideas that are going to help us to boost our tourism market. And as you know, the tourism connection between China and Toronto is growing ever stronger every single day. It is our fastest growing tourism market right now, China, and inbound tourism to Toronto. The Fosun Corporation is active in the film business. And again, we have a huge film business here in terms of studios that are trying to expand to keep up with all the productions we're doing here. And I would look to a company like Fosun to say, would you like to come here and be part of our film business? And I made that express invitation to them while we were there. And then there were some of the announcements we actually did make, whether it was the Lesso Corporation, who are looking to establish a kind of a showcase for home products here, and it's the same opportunity that exists for people like that to showcase their products, if they're Canadians or otherwise, in a business that's going to be invested in by that Chinese-based corporation, and be able to sell those products around the world, or Huawei and the activities, of course, that they're going to undertake in the world of 5G, where we had a fascinating seminar with them about the impact that 5G technology, which they're working very hard on at their R&D labs, is going to have on Ontario and Toronto society. They already have, as you know, hundreds of jobs located in the province of Ontario. I want them to establish a much bigger presence here in the city of Toronto. And so I'm happy to discuss other meetings and other examples. We had university-to-university agreements that were signed to do research and development work and to cooperate. We had a renewal of our cooperative agreements with Chongqing. We had the seeds planted of agreements that we might have with Shanghai and, for that matter, Tokyo. You know, there are various rules that exist about how many different sister city relationships there can be. And so I said to the mayor of Shanghai that while they are already a sister city with Montreal, maybe we can explore being a brother city or a cousin city or an uncle city. But, you know, I think the bottom line is that given that the mayor of Shanghai and myself agreed that we are both the respective talent capitals of our 2 countries, that it would be sensible for us to have some kind of an agreement to work together going forward as a result of this visit that we've just made. So, you know, in the end, I am a strong believer that these trips are very necessary to the development of stronger and more prosperous relationships between any 2 countries, but in particular between one where there's the foundation of such a strong relationship already, namely China and Toronto in particular. But that's subject to 2 conditions. One is you have to follow up and actually do something about these relationships. You have to follow up on every meeting you had. You have to make sure that you roll out the welcome mat and make sure it's apparent to every one of these companies we saw. And there are meetings taking place in my office today, as there have been earlier this week, to make sure we do exactly that. There is no meeting we had that will not be followed by an aggressive follow-up, so that we can say you are welcome here. We want to explore every possibility for you to invest and create jobs here, and for us to sell our products into China, for that matter, because I think that's what I was sent there to do. The same is true of the cooperative agreements between the cities and between things like the universities. So I think that's very apparent. And the second thing, and I made one conditional on the other, I was very candid with these mayors, and I think they enjoyed my candor, and I said to them, I will not be coming back for simply birthday parties or anniversary celebrations or signing papers. I'll be coming back because we have tangible achievements that we've found together, jobs and investment at both ends, more cooperation, real progress on building a much stronger and deeper relationship. And so I promised them I would come back, but it would only be once we had achieved those things. And in my case, I hope that can be done within the next couple of years, because I think you again gain some benefit from the people you're trying to deal with and be partners with if you come often and you don't sort of just show up once in a blue moon. And so I think having the time period elapsed between 2008 and 2016 without a mayor of Toronto being in China was too long, and I would look not to see that time period repeated before my next visit, because I hope to continue to be the mayor for 6.5 more years after this, one more term after this one, but the voters will obviously get to decide that. So I'll stop there, and that just gives you a little bit of an outline of what we did. But if you want to ask more particular questions about the trip or individual parts of it or other comments that I have, I'm at your disposal.
So Mayor, what impressed you most during your trip?
Well, there were 3 things that I was particularly impressed by in terms of things that I saw in China that were either different from what I'd seen many years ago when I was there, or just things I hadn't seen at all before. I would have to say that first and foremost was the incredibly dynamic nature of the cities. They're big, they're bigger than Toronto, but they work. I said when I was in Chongqing, the notion that you would have a city of 30 million people that would actually function and work well is something we would find hard to contemplate here, because I know we have our challenges making a city of just under 3 million people work in terms of traffic congestion and all the different things you have to confront when you're trying to run a big city. Secondly, I was incredibly struck by the excellence in building design. This will sound like an odd thing to mention, but when I was in both Shanghai, where of course it had changed so remarkably since I was there 32 years ago, and Chongqing, which has itself changed even though I hadn't been there before, I noticed that they seem to strive for a higher quality of design in their buildings, and make sure that they have more buildings that are iconic, that are very memorable in nature. And I think it's something that we should be thinking more about as we go about building out our own city. I think we've often been, satisfied with something that is kind of average. And I think Toronto is not an average city. It is a way above average city. It is one of the most globally respected cities, and I think we should be paying more attention to those kinds of things like building design ourselves. I was incredibly struck by the efforts and the resources that are put into landscaping the streets. I mean, Shanghai, it really puts us to the test in terms of whether we're prepared to accept a higher standard and achieve a higher standard here in terms of just making sure that open spaces and streetscapes and so on are done to the level that they're done in those cities. And I think, again, it sets a standard that we should be seeking to match. And then I'll mention one more thing, which is the incredibly dynamic and growing, ambitious business communities that exist in every part of the country we visited. And that just gives me great hope that there are plenty of opportunities for us to attract investment from some of those companies that are so successful there and in other parts of the world, and that there's a huge marketplace of people into which to sell our goods. But now, as they pointed out, that the British and the Australians are more aggressive than we are. They sell better than we do. And I think that has to change. I think if Canada has this opportunity with China because of the long-standing special relationship, because of the mutually shared substantial populations, because of the existing trading arrangements, and we want to make it bigger, we're going to have to work at it. We have to show up. We have to make the effort. We have to sell. We have to come up with ideas. And I'm determined to do that, working with the business community here to make sure we can take full advantage of that. But those were some of the things that impressed me the most.
Mayor Kyle from Fairchild Television. When you in Chongqing meeting those government officials, is there any good news for the panda, Damao and Arshun, after their spending in Calgary, going to be possibly back to Toronto Zoo again?
Well, I will say only this. We raised it with the mayor. It wasn't the time when we were going to have detailed negotiations, but he certainly knows of the enthusiasm with which the pandas have been received here, both the parents and the cubs. He knows of the fact that we would like to find a way to have either these pandas or some other pandas here on a continuing basis after the end of the period when they're scheduled to be here. And just to remind him of our interest, the gift that I took him, the official gift from Toronto, was I think there's only 2 in existence, a set of paw prints of the 2 panda cubs taken from their paws in the Toronto Zoo, and it's in a frame, and it's identical to the one that hangs in my office downstairs. And that was no accident that was the gift that we gave him, so he'd be reminded of the fact that if possible we'd love to keep those pandas, but I know that's not something that's likely to happen. So I would only say to you that that's one of the things now we have to follow up on. He knows of our interest. He knows that it is something that we see as very important symbolically and otherwise as part of this relationship we've had, which we've renewed, hopefully for another 30 years, and it's now our job to follow up.
And my following question is that beyond the area you addressed earlier in the speech, such as public transit, food industry, do you have anything specifically in your mind for Toronto or Torontonians to explore more opportunities back in mainland of China to cooperate?
Well, I will only tell you now that their appetite for some of the expertise we have on things we're good at, like food processing, like infrastructure development, their appetite for our expertise in some areas where we've just had sort of slightly further developed industries is huge. And it's an opportunity for us to present people and present relationships to them. And I think there's only two ways we're going to do that. Taking people there who are experts in different areas of research or business or otherwise, and bringing people here to see what we've done or how we do things. And so it isn't going to happen because we write emails back and forth. A lot of it's going to be about relationships. And so I want to take the dossier of relationships that we sort of explored while we were there. I want to go to Greenland and say, well, this is a good start to have this food distribution business that's headquartered here in the GTA. But there are many more things they can do. I'm happy at the fact that they have made a major investment in one condominium hotel development in downtown Toronto. But they're a real estate company that is of such a scale that I'd love to see them do much more. And invest, say, in some of the redevelopment of our portlands. And we discussed that with 2 or 3 real estate companies in Hong Kong and in Shanghai, that they might come and be part of this massive redevelopment we have to do that's going to cost billions of dollars. I would love to see some of the transit expertise that I saw evidence in Chongqing. People may not say, well, Chongqing is a big transit capital compared to, say, Hong Kong. But they've put in place a monorail system which has been built in a relatively short period of time. It is cheaper construction than other forms of transit. It leaves a smaller footprint, and it is quiet and environmentally very sound. And so, why wouldn't we want to at least explore whether there's any application for that in Toronto? And so I just think there's 100 things for us to be exploring, and that's what they're in my office right now, putting lists together to follow up on each and every one of these items and make sure that we don't leave any stone unturned in terms of opportunities for us to sell goods and expertise and services to the Chinese market, and in turn for them to sell things to us, and more particularly to invest here in Toronto and create jobs here where I think they can make money and do very well.
Mr. Mayor, it's being considered that Toronto is going to bid for the World Expo in 2025. Again, you have been to Shanghai and Tokyo, who are either the city who hosted the expo, who are expecting to have that now. So do you have the exchange with the 2 cities in this respect?
I didn't ask anything in Tokyo about that because, in the event we decided to put in a bid, they would be our competitors. So yeah. I didn't want to sort of embarrass them because I think they probably read that we're thinking about bidding. I did ask the mayor of Shanghai about it and about their experience, and he was nothing but positive about it. He said that it had, caused them to do a lot of things in terms of refurbishing an area of their city that had previously been, not as active and dynamic as it is today. And even now, it's been refurbished, but it's going to be refurbished again in the post-Expo period. He did, point out to me that obviously the big question that you have to have answered before you can bid is, how are you going to pay for it all? And so that is something which we have to explore very actively in this country. I received a report, as you may know, and if you haven't seen it, we'd be happy to get you a copy of it, in February, written by a group of people who I asked to give us a checklist or a kind of a framework within which you could make decisions as to whether to bid on Olympics or expos or other kinds of international events, because you can't bid on them all. And so right now the task in front of us in terms of the expo bid, a possible expo bid, is to look at that checklist and go through it and see what the answers are to the questions that are posed. And the very first question at the top of the list of that checklist is are the federal and provincial governments on side with this, both in terms of supporting it, but also in terms of their financial support. And so that is a question that we're pursuing right now to sort of determine what level of interest they have. After that is pursued, that would be a big factor in deciding whether we would proceed ahead, even with additional extensive research on what's involved in putting in a bid. But as you know, Kristen Wong Tam, the councillor, and a number of other people who have joined her have a keen interest in doing this. And I don't want to discourage them, but I just say that we're going to go about it in a very business-like, methodical way and make the decision based on common sense and facts. And even the mayor of Shanghai, as much as he said that the expo had been extremely positive for them, he also emphasized that it has to be sort of done in a business-like way, especially as regards the money.
In China, in Shanghai, right? What kind of?
I'm sorry, what kind of sale?
You said you saw the produce usually sell in Canada. Now sell in.
No, what I said was it was in Shanghai that we signed the agreement with the Greenland Group, where they're going to open here kind of a facility that is meant to allow Canadian food producers to come and make their products available, and they will in turn then, the Greenland Group, make those products available in the Chinese market through their upscale grocery stores that they have. And they intend, they told me, the Greenland Group, when they opened this business, to basically issue an open invitation to Canadian food product manufacturers to say, if you have something you produce here that is not available in the Chinese market, we will make it easy for you to make that product available in the Chinese market by using this distribution center and then sending the product off to China. And so I can't specify which products will fall into that category, but I'm sure there are many things we produce here that are things that the manufacturers would love to have made available in China, and that Chinese consumers would love to have the opportunity to buy in those stores.
So you can give us one sample?
No, not right now, but I mean, I just think of lots of different things we enjoy to eat over here that probably Chinese consumers would love to eat, and I haven't talked to anybody who, because the thing isn't, it isn't here yet, but once it is here, I can imagine there'll be a lineup of Canadian food producers who will want to have their products put on sale in the Chinese market, and it'll be immensely beneficial to them.
So I need to chat with the CC person. I would like to see, after visiting all the transit system in Tokyo, Hong Kong, and Toronto, is there anything in your mind that we can, learn from them to make our system more efficient and, accommodate more people, less problem or well-developed over the city?
Definitely, and I said some comments to the English language press the other day about this. The first lesson that I learned is that in each of those cases, Chongqing, Shanghai, Tokyo, Hong Kong, there has been extensive involvement of the private sector in building, in some cases operating, transit systems. And here, we have a fear of that. It's a kind of I'm not sure when I say it's a fear, I think that's the right word. We somehow believe that if you had the private sector taking a greater role with all of their money and all of their ingenuity, that this would be a bad thing for consumers. I believe, subject to appropriate regulation of fares, so that it doesn't get too expensive, there's nothing but a benefit to be achieved by at least asking people in the private sector what they could do to help us build more transit faster. I look at the experience of MTR, I look at the experience of Japan Rail, and what they've been able to do in those cities to build incredibly extensive transit systems way beyond what we have. And I say to myself, why wouldn't you want to sort of take advantage of some of the expertise and some of the experience they've had to see if we could do more faster here in Toronto? One of the things they've done as part of that partnership with the private sector is to take much greater advantage of development opportunities that exist above and around subway stations. And I think, again, it's something we have failed to do here. If you look at intersections like Eglinton and Yonge, or Davisville and Yonge, just to pick two right in the middle of the city, where the Transit Commission here, the TTC, owns huge pieces of land. And in both cases, they've sat relatively undeveloped all these years, when in fact what we could have done is allow for appropriate development. It doesn't have to be something that's overpowering, but allowed for appropriate development to take place to the benefit of the Transit Commission, the TTC, who would have got some of the money from that, and be able to put that money to building more transit. But we haven't done any of that. Even when I was in London, I saw that some of the developers there were asked to build stations underground that were connected to their development, so that's very beneficial to them, but they paid for the stations, and that took that cost away from the taxpayers. So I learned a lot, and I learned a lot about the efficient administration of those systems, and I think, again, there are things we could learn from the incredibly sort of efficient way in which those systems are run. The incredibly active, economically active nature of the stations, where there's a lot of retail activity and things that cause people not just to go and catch a train, but also to buy something and shop and so on. And also things like the octopus card. I think in Japan it's called the IC card. But these are cards where not only do you use them to travel on the transit, and we have a Presto card here, but you can use them to shop and to do all kinds of things. And I think in the case of the Hong Kong system, the octopus card is actually a profit center. It returns a dividend to the transit system, to the transit system in Hong Kong, which they can use to build and operate more transit. And I think these are things we should be looking very seriously at. I don't say we have to do them all, and I'm not suggesting we have any kind of wholesale turning over of our transit system to the private sector, but I am saying we should be exploring partnerships to try and get more things done faster. The final thing I'll say is that I noticed in all of those cities something that we have been very poor at doing, and it's because we've allowed politics and playing politics and political gamesmanship to interfere too much with this. They all have a long-term plan for transit, and it's a plan that stretches out for 20 or 25 years and goes back 10 or 15 or 20 years. And they can show you what they've done that was in the plan over the last 10 years, and they can show you what they're doing now and what they're going to be doing in 10 years. I'm trying right now, as you know, to have a plan that effectively covers the next 15 or 20 years in Toronto, between Smart Track, Scarborough Subway, LRTs in Scarborough, the Waterfront LRT, and so on, the Relief Line. I'm trying to have a plan that will probably stretch over the next 15 or 20 years so we can commit ourselves to that and then get on with it without redeciding and redebating and reopening these things, because I think we simply have to move to the kind of arrangement that these Asian cities, Chinese and Japanese cities, have moved to very successfully, which is to have a long-term plan and then actually carry it out. And we have never really had a long-term plan where it's been put down and saying these are the things we're going to do and the order in which we're going to do them, and we certainly haven't carried them out. Even when we've had plans that appear to be longer term in nature, we then stop doing them, we cancel them, we change them, and we've simply got to move ahead. The city's growing too fast to continue on the way we've been doing things for the last number of years.
So it might be a tremendous job to convince the officials or other counterparts that we have to do it, but how are you going to do this?
Well, I'm counting on the people. I'm counting on the people to help me. I think if the people heard me say what I'm just saying here now to you, which is that we cannot afford any longer to wait on building this transit. We can't afford to reject any kind of a partnership. We can't afford to reject out of hand for ideological reasons the involvement of the private sector to some extent, an appropriate extent, whatever that is. And I think the people, if they hear politicians in the city of Toronto routinely saying that, you know, that we don't need those partnerships and we can do it all and all this kind of thing, I think people will say, no, you can't. You've proven over and over again you can't do it because we're in a mess with respect to traffic and transit. And I think they will say to their politicians, you know, open your minds and open your hearts and open your wallets and get on with building some transit. And I really believe that if I take a leadership position on that, partly based on some of the inspiring experiences I saw in Asia, that the people will respond positively.
Thanks.
June 8, I met David Miller in Beijing. He said 2 years in China they can build more than one subway, but in Toronto maybe the proposal is not finished in City Hall. I hope you can do much better. And according to what you said, you have a big chance to do much better. But in other side, in all over the world, the ministers, the mayors come to China, so many. How can you make Toronto more distinguished from other cities?
I think we have three things going for us that are going to allow Toronto perhaps to be noticed a little more than all the other people. Because I know that for every meeting I had with the mayor of Shanghai and the mayor of Chongqing, I think they had a half an hour to change the teacups and somebody else was coming in half an hour later. I understand that because everybody wants to have access to this market and to have access to partnerships with these very accomplished business people and so on. I think, first of all, the excellent relationship, the excellent consistent relationship between Canada and China over 45 years is something that's going to be beneficial to us. I think, secondly, that while we may not have the very biggest Chinese population, for example, living in Toronto, we have a very big one relative to world standards. And vice versa, we have a very substantial number of Canadians living in parts of China. And we have programs like all the students back and forth that are here. And I think that is going to stand us in good stead. And I think thirdly, the relationships that do exist that make China our second largest trading partner are relationships that are working well, whether they're in financial services or in food processing or in natural resources. These are relationships that are working well. And I think those three things, plus one thing I discovered is that the Chinese people that I was exposed to, that I met, do know of Toronto as being a very forward-looking, a very embracing, very accepting city. They know of our diversity, and I think they see us as being different than some of the other cities that are coming to call. And I think that has heightened their interest in using this as a place where they can use it safely and in a stable way as a gateway for all of North America. They would feel more comfortable coming to a place like this, which they know is a gateway to the world. It's a gateway to Europe. I sold this as part of what we have to say for ourselves. We are part of the European Free Trade Agreement. We are part of the North American Free Trade Agreement. We're going to be part of TPP, and that it makes us sitting right in the center of all that, geographically and otherwise, a place with a huge Chinese population, a talented workforce, and so on, a place that's unique, because we're in all those different arrangements, and we have a huge Chinese population, which means there's already many relationships back and forth, and we have a highly educated, talented workforce. And I think that that story does set us apart from, Atlanta can't say it's part of the European Free Trade Agreement. Cities in Australia can say they're closer than Canada is, but they can't say they're part of the North American Free Trade Agreement. And so I think there are lots of things we have going for ourselves that will be immensely beneficial as we try to build this relationship.
Mr. Mayor, just a follow-up question. Public transit is such a big and hot topic in our city of Toronto now, and you mentioned just now that we need more involvement of the public, the private sector to involved. When you are talking about this, is that you are talking about infrastructure investment or operation of the transit system? Or?
I am saying, and I don't want to be misunderstood on this, but I am saying in terms of considering any alternative at all, I would consider it. And considering doesn't mean you have to do it or that you do it. But if you said to me, would I love to see some people from the MTR in Hong Kong come over here and take a look at our transit system and say, boy, we'd sure be interested in doing this or doing that to help you to build a better transit system faster that could serve more people. I'm not going to say, well, I'm not going to speak to you because you're not from here or because you're a private company traded on the Hong Kong Stock Exchange. I'm going to say, well, tell me, about how you would do that, and tell me about, how that fits into our transit plans. I just think that we've got infrastructure investors right here, some of our biggest pension funds, who will tell you that they're investing in airports and subway systems and railways and so on all around the world. The only place they're not investing is here. And it's insanity, because we've sort of somehow said, well, we only would sort of think it all has to be done by the government all the time, subject to the same old rules. And I'd say, well, some of that's worked well for us. There have been parts of our transit system that have worked very well, and I want to build on that. And I want to maintain a strong, public transit system that is run by the government. But I think that the notion that we might invite in partners to help us build a system faster and better doesn't scare me, to at least consider it. And I think anybody who would rule those things out before they've even thought about them is not, thinking of the best interests of Toronto in terms of getting our transit system built faster and better.
Hey, any timeline for your next China trip?
No, if I had to guess at a time that would be productive, just so you know what I said to some of the other English language media who said to me, well, when is the time to judge this trip in terms of exactly how many jobs and how many contracts and how many relationships? And I said, I thought in about a year. I think that, like anything else when you're trying to sell something, rarely do you walk into the room, whatever it is you're trying to sell, whether it's a city or a product, and make the sale the first instant you shake hands with the people you're meeting. And so I think that given we haven't been to China since 2008, we've gone there, we had a whole bunch of meetings, we met a whole lot of people, we're going to follow up on all these relationships. And I was confident in saying to some of your colleagues in the English language media that I am very confident a year from today I will be able to sit right here, which I'm quite happy to do with you, and discuss all of the things that did come to fruition, the investments that were made, the jobs that did come as a result of that, the sales that we did make to China. Because I just know from all the discussions that I took part in that these people are very interested in doing business with us. They needed to see the mayor, among other people, to show up and say, we really are interested, we will help you when you get here. One of the companies we met in Tokyo wants to build 2 hotels here. And we saw them the last day we were there, which was last Saturday. They happened to be coming here on Monday. I saw the man, very same man I'd met in Tokyo, in my office, shaking his hand, saying, what can I do for you now that you're here to make sure these hotels get built? And that's the kind of thing I'm going to be doing on company after company, opportunity after opportunity in China and Japan, and by the way, the United States and Europe, because my job is to attract jobs and investment to the city for the adults and for the children that aren't yet ready for the job market. But you've got to work ahead on those things. So I think the judgment of the success of the trip should come in about a year, and I think the next trip should come sometime in the 18-month to 2-year time frame from now, just because I think you have time to sort of work on the files you started and then get a bunch of new files and start over with them and go back and renew the friendships and make an appearance. And in the meantime, I would of course hope that there'll be many other people from Toronto that will be in China for other reasons, but I think as far as myself as the mayor, I would think in the 18-month to 2-year time frame it would be appropriate.
So we know that like Premier Catherine Wink will not go to China very often, but Michael Chen going to China tomorrow again.
Yes.
Right. So will Councillor Michael Thompson be able to go to China more often?
Yes. I think he will go as often as is necessary to follow up on the files that we have opened as a result of this trip and other files that will open in the days ahead. That's his job. And I was talking to the Premier yesterday. I met with her yesterday and told her about our trip. And I told her actually how helpful it was that she had been in China 4 or 5 months ago and had visited some of the same places we visited, and then I came as the Mayor of Toronto after that, because she referred to it in her press conference yesterday and said, well, there was some overlap, and she meant that in a positive way, and I clarified that with the press afterwards. I said, you know, when she said overlap, she didn't mean that this was somehow a duplication that was a bad thing. She meant that it was good for Toronto and good for Ontario that the Premier showed up, and then a few months later the Mayor of Toronto showed up to say, we are really interested in doing business with you. You know, we are here to kind of strengthen those relationships you started with the Premier. And so I would think that we're going to stay in much closer touch. One of the things we concluded as a result of this trip is that we should better coordinate, because the Prime Minister's the next one to go. He's going in at maybe August and at the latest September. He might go, in fact, twice, once for the summit and once for a trip before that. They haven't decided yet. But again, I think that's a good thing. It's a good thing that somebody from Canada, and in this case I care most about Toronto obviously, is showing up there regularly to say, you know, back to your question earlier on, hi, we're here and we want to do business with you and we want you to invest in our city and we want you to come and visit us. I mean, tourism is another area. I sit and look out my window. I don't want you to think I spend the whole day looking out the window, but I have such a beautiful view that's basically the view you can see from here in my own office. And there isn't a day goes by that I don't see a group of Chinese tourists where they've got the person with the flag and they're following along on their tour of City Hall. And it is our fastest growing tourism market. And there are, what, 1.3 billion people that are possibilities to come and visit Toronto. I know not all of them can yet afford it, but there are an awful lot who can. And I want to make sure this is a favored place for them to come and visit, and that they tell their friends that they're welcome here. And that's an important thing as well, that we have to go and continue to sell in China. With you once a quarter or something, just because I know that, you know, you'll ask a lot of the same questions, of course, that the others will ask, because you're interested in the same. Listeners and viewers and readers, that I would want to have this opportunity, if you'd like to have it, if you think it would be helpful. If you don't think it would be helpful, I won't waste your time. But I think China, whatever you like. I want to take another trip to China.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Thank you.
12 a year.
Pardon me?
12 a year.
That's fine. And you know what else? I want to say thank you. And Alex, you and help me a bit, because my Chinese isn't so good, as you probably know. It's non-existent. But he helped me a lot to make sure that we stayed in touch with you during the Chinese, but because they were Torontonians, and if they looked at your newspapers and TV and listened to your radio stations, I wanted to make sure they knew what I was doing on